Smile, Rebecca. Smile right now, or I swear to God I'll strangle you when we get home. Marcus's fingers dug into my upper arm, his breath hot against my ear as we stood in line at the carnival. All around us, families laughed. Children squealed on rides. The smell of popcorn and cotton candy hung in the warm summer air. And my husband was threatening to kill me because I wasn't performing happiness convincingly enough. I am smiling, I whispered, my cheeks already aching from holding the fake expression for the past 2 hours. Not like that. Like you mean it. Like you're the luckiest woman alive. His grip tightened until I felt my circulation cutting off. We're getting our photo taken, and you're going to look happy. Do you understand me? I nodded, blinking back tears. 6 months. That's how long it had been since I'd married Marcus Holbrook, the successful attorney that everyone in our small Connecticut town admired. 6 months since I'd realized the charming man I'd dated was a carefully constructed lie. 6 months of walking on eggshells, of monitoring every word, every facial expression, every breath. Next, the teenage photographer waved us forward to the photo booth setup, one of those old-fashioned carnival attractions with the striped curtain backdrop. Marcus's hand moved to my waist, pulling me close. To anyone watching, we looked like newlyweds. His smile was warm, his touch seemingly affectionate. They couldn't see how his fingers pressed into my ribs like a warning. They couldn't hear the venom in his voice as he murmured, "Disappoint me, and you'll regret it." The flash went off once. Twice. 3 times. "Beautiful couple," the photographer chirped. "You can pick up your prints at booth 7 in about 20 minutes. Marcus released me the moment we turned away, his face going cold. "I need a drink. Stay here. Don't move. Don't talk to anyone." He walked toward the beer garden, leaving me standing alone near the photo booth area. I wrapped my arms around myself despite the heat, fighting the urge to run. But where would I go? Marcus had isolated me so completely. My friends had drifted away after he'd convinced me they were bad influences. My parents lived in Oregon now, and Marcus monitored every call. My job at the library had ended after he'd persuaded me that working was unnecessary stress. I was trapped in a cage that looked like a fairy tale from the outside. "Your turn, miss." I startled at the photographer's voice, realizing I was blocking the line. I moved aside quickly, watching as a young family took their place. The mother laughed as her toddler made faces. The father kissed her cheek. Real smiles, real affection. Everything I'd thought I was getting. "Excuse me." The voice came from behind me, deep and slightly rough, with an accent I couldn't quite place. Eastern European? Maybe Italian. I turned and found myself looking up at a man who made my breath catch in my throat for entirely different reasons than Marcus did. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair pushed back from a face that looked carved from stone. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, and eyes so dark they were almost black. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my car, perfectly tailored to broad shoulders and a lean frame. Everything about him screamed money and power, but there was something else, too. Something dangerous. "I'm sorry," I stammered, stepping further aside. "Am I in your way?" "No." His eyes moved over my face, lingering on my arm where Marcus's fingers had left red marks. Something flickered in his expression. "I'm looking for photo booth 7. The woman at the entrance said it was near the striped backdrop." "Oh, that's this one." I pointed to the number painted on the wooden frame. "This is booth 7. "You're certain?" "Yes, I'm picking up photos here too, in about 15 minutes. He nodded slowly, his gaze still fixed on my face with an intensity that made me nervous. Not the sick, twisting nervousness that Marcus inspired, but something else. Something that made my skin feel too warm. "Your arm," he said quietly. "Someone hurt you." I automatically pulled my sleeve down, even though it was a short-sleeved blouse and couldn't hide the marks. "I'm fine. I just bruise easily. You're a terrible liar." There was no judgment in his voice, just simple observation. "I don't know you," I said, my heart racing. "You can't just—" Luca Moretti. He extended his hand. Now you know me. I stared at his hand, knowing I shouldn't take it, knowing Marcus could come back any second. But something in me, some small spark of rebellion that Marcus hadn't quite extinguished, made me reach out. Rebecca Holbrook. His hand engulfed mine, warm and strong, and for just a moment I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Safe. Your husband did that to you. It wasn't a question. I pulled my hand back, panic rising in my chest. Please, he'll be back any second. If he sees me talking to you. If he sees you talking to me, what? He'll hurt you more? You don't understand. He's not someone you want to cross. Something that might have been amusement flickered across Luca Moretti's face. I assure you, Mrs. Holbrook, I am far less concerned about crossing your husband than you should be about what he's doing to you. Rebecca! Marcus's voice cut through the crowd like a whip. What the hell are you doing? He was striding toward us, his face flushed with anger and alcohol, his eyes locked on me with that look I'd learned to fear. The look that meant I'd done something wrong, something that would require punishment. I asked you a question. Marcus grabbed my wrist, yanking me toward him. Who is this? Nobody. He was just asking for directions. You were holding his hand. I saw you. Mr. Holbrook, I presume. Luca's voice was calm, almost lazy, but there was steel underneath. Your wife was kind enough to help me find the photo booth. Marcus's eyes narrowed as he took in Luca's expensive suit, his confident stance. I could see the calculation happening in my husband's mind. This wasn't someone he could bully easily. Well, she's done helping you. Marcus's grip on my wrist tightened painfully. We need to go. Actually, Luca said, I believe you both have photos to collect. In about 10 minutes. It would be a shame to waste the money. I don't care about the photos. No, Luca agreed quietly. You don't care about much, do you? Except control. The air went cold. Marcus's face darkened. And I felt genuine terror spike through me. He was going to do something right here, in front of everyone. Marcus, please, I said quickly. Let's just get the photos and leave. Please. For a long moment, Marcus stared at Luca, some silent battle of wills happening between them. Then Marcus smiled, that charming smile he used on everyone else. You're right. We should get our photos. Come on, Rebecca. He pulled me away, his fingers crushing my wrist bones together. As soon as we were far enough away, he leaned down to hiss in my ear. What did you tell him? Nothing. He just asked where the photo booth was. You were holding his hand. He offered to shake hands. It was just polite. There's nothing polite about what I'm going to do to you when we get home. His voice was conversational, pleasant even. But the words made my stomach turn to ice. You embarrassed me, in public, with some Italian pretty boy who thinks he can— Your photos are ready, the teenager called out, holding up 2 envelopes. Holbrook and Moretti. Marcus released me to grab our envelope, ripping it open. I watched as he looked at the photos, as his jaw clenched. I knew what he was seeing. The smile he'd forced onto my face looked exactly like what it was. Fake. Frightened. False. Luca stepped up to collect his envelope, and I caught a glimpse of his photos as he opened them. He was alone in each one, but there was something about his expression, something in his eyes that looked almost sad. Let's go. Marcus grabbed my elbow, steering me toward the parking lot. Wait, Luca's voice stopped us. Mrs. Holbrook, you dropped something. I turned to see him holding out a small card. I knew I hadn't dropped anything, but Marcus's grip loosened slightly as I stepped back to take it. Thank you, I murmured. Our fingers brushed as I took the card, and he leaned in slightly. When you're ready to leave, he said so quietly only I could hear, call that number, anytime, day or night. I palmed the card quickly, my heart hammering. What did he give you? Marcus demanded as we walked. Nothing, just something I dropped. He snatched my hand, prying my fingers open. I'd tucked the card up my sleeve, and all he found was my empty palm. You're lying. I'm not. Marcus, please, you're hurting me. He pushed me toward his BMW, unlocking it with a vicious jab at the key fob. Get in the car. The drive home was silent, which was worse than yelling. Marcus's silence meant he was planning, thinking, deciding on my punishment. I sat rigid in the passenger seat, watching the familiar streets of our town slide past, wondering if tonight would be the night he finally went too far. We lived in a beautiful colonial house with a white picket fence, exactly the kind of place I'd dreamed about as a little girl. Now it felt like a prison. Marcus parked in the garage and hit the button to close the door behind us. The mechanical whir of the door descending sounded like a cell being locked. Get inside. I fumbled with my seatbelt, my hands shaking. The card in my sleeve felt like it was burning against my skin. We'd barely made it into the kitchen when Marcus grabbed my shoulders and slammed me against the wall. Not hard enough to leave a mark where anyone could see. He was always careful about that. Do you have any idea, he said, his face inches from mine, how it looked? My wife, holding hands with some stranger? It was just a handshake. Don't lie to me! He punctuated each word with a shake that rattled my teeth. I saw the way you looked at him. I saw you smile. A real smile. You never smile at me like that. Marcus, please. Please what? Please forgive you? Please pretend you're not a faithless witch who can't even manage to look happy for 5 minutes? The doorbell rang. We both froze. Marcus released me, smoothing down his shirt, his face transforming into that pleasant mask he wore for the outside world. Don't move, he ordered, then walked to the front door. I stayed pressed against the kitchen wall, trying to calm my racing heart. Through the doorway, I could hear voices. Marcus's polite greeting, and then another voice, deep, familiar. Mr. Holbrook, I apologize for the intrusion. Luca Moretti. My blood went cold. What was he doing here? How had he found our house? Can I help you? Marcus's voice was tight, barely maintaining civility. Actually, yes. I was hoping to speak with you about a business matter. May I come in? There was a long pause. Then, it's late. It's 8:30, and I promise this won't take long. I heard footsteps, and then both men appeared in the kitchen doorway. Marcus looked furious beneath his fake smile. Luca looked completely at ease, his dark eyes finding me immediately, cataloging my position against the wall, my expression, the way I was holding my arm. Rebecca, Marcus said with false cheerfulness, this is Mr. Moretti. Apparently he wants to discuss business. Why don't you make us some coffee? It wasn't a suggestion. I moved toward the coffee maker on shaking legs, hyper-aware of both men watching me. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, gesturing for Luca to do the same. So, Marcus said, what business could you possibly have with me? I'm in the market for legal representation, Luca replied smoothly. I was told you're one of the best attorneys in Connecticut. I nearly dropped the coffee filter. That was a lie. Luca Moretti hadn't come here for legal advice. But why had he come? Marcus preened slightly. Well, I do have an excellent reputation. What kind of representation do you need? Various matters, business contracts primarily. Perhaps some real estate issues. Luca leaned back in his chair, somehow looking more in control than Marcus, even though this was Marcus's house. I'm expanding my operations to this area. Operations? I own several businesses. Import-export, restaurants, real estate development. As they talked, I finished making the coffee, my mind racing. Luca's presence here felt like a grenade that could explode at any moment. What was he doing? Didn't he realize he was making things worse for me? I set the coffee cups on the table, and Luca's eyes met mine briefly. There was something in his gaze, some message I couldn't quite read. Thank you, Mrs. Holbrook. His voice was gentle, in stark contrast to the hard edge it took on when he turned back to Marcus. Your wife is very gracious. Yes, well, she knows how to be a proper hostess when she wants to be. Marcus's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, pulling me down into the chair beside him. Sit with us, darling. Mr. Moretti might be a valuable client. I sat stiffly, all too aware of Marcus's hand remaining on my wrist, his thumb pressed against my pulse point in a way that looked affectionate, but felt like a threat. So tell me more about these business ventures, Marcus continued. Luca sipped his coffee, his expression neutral. As I said, various interests, some of them quite complicated. I need an attorney who isn't afraid of complex situations, someone discreet. I'm very discreet. Are you? Luca set down his cup. That's good. Discretion is valuable, particularly when it comes to certain, shall we say, sensitive matters. Something passed between the two men, some unspoken understanding. Marcus's grip on my wrist loosened slightly. I'm not sure I follow, Marcus said carefully. No. Allow me to be clearer. Luca leaned forward. I know who you are, Mr. Holbrook. I know what you are. And I know exactly what you do to your wife behind closed doors. The kitchen went silent. I couldn't breathe. Marcus's hand went rigid on my wrist. I think you should leave, Marcus said quietly. I don't think I will. Luca's voice was calm, almost pleasant. You see, I have a problem with men who hurt women. Call it a personal quirk. When I see bruises shaped like fingerprints, when I see fear in someone's eyes, when I watch a man threaten his wife at a carnival, he shrugged. I tend to take an interest. Marcus stood abruptly, pulling me up with him. Get out of my house. Or what? Luca remained seated, completely unfazed. You'll call the police? Please do. I'm sure they'd be very interested in your wife's injuries. And I have excellent lawyers. Better than you. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Actually, I do. Luca stood then, and somehow the kitchen felt smaller, the air thicker. You're Marcus Holbrook, mid-level attorney, born in Hartford, graduated from a middling law school, married Rebecca 6 months ago. You've had 3 prior relationships, all of which ended with restraining orders that your father's connections made disappear. You're a coward and a bully who preys on women because you're too weak to face anyone who might fight back. Marcus's face went purple. Who the hell are you? I told you. Luca Moretti. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, setting it on the table. But perhaps you'd like more details. My family has certain connections. In New York, in Boston, in several other major cities. Connections that make your father's influence look like a child's tea party. The implication hung in the air. I felt Marcus's hand trembling on my wrist. You're threatening me, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. No, I'm giving you information. Luca's eyes moved to where Marcus held my wrist. Here's more information. You're going to release your wife. You're going to step away from her. And you're going to leave this house for the evening. Take a hotel room, visit a friend, I don't care. But you will not stay here tonight. This is my house. This is a house you bought with money from a joint account that includes your wife's inheritance, Luca interrupted, which makes it legally half hers. Now let her go. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Marcus released my wrist and stepped back, his face twisted with rage and something else. Fear. This isn't over, he said. You're absolutely right. Luca pulled out his phone. In fact, it's just beginning. I have friends at the district attorney's office. Friends who would be very interested in those sealed restraining orders. Friends who believe that patterns of behavior are admissible evidence. So here's what's going to happen, Mr. Holbrook. You're going to leave, your wife is going to file for divorce, and you're going to sign whatever papers she wants you to sign, quickly and quietly. And if I don't? Luca's smile was cold. Then those connections I mentioned become very relevant. Do you understand what I'm saying? The color drained from Marcus's face. Whatever Luca was implying, Marcus understood perfectly. You can't. I can. I will. Luca's voice dropped lower. And I promise you, Mr. Holbrook, what your wife has endured at your hands will seem merciful compared to what certain people I know will do if they learn you've continued to hurt her. The silence stretched out, broken only by the ticking of the kitchen clock. I stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. This stranger had walked into my house and in 5 minutes had done what I'd been unable to do in 6 months. Marcus looked at me, his eyes full of hate. "You're going to regret this." "No," Luca said softly. "You are. Now leave." Marcus grabbed his keys from the counter and stormed out. A moment later, I heard his BMW roar to life, then fade into the distance. The house fell quiet. I started shaking, my legs giving out beneath me. Luca moved quickly, catching me before I hit the floor, guiding me back into a chair. "Breathe," he said quietly. "You're safe. He's gone." "What did you do?" The words came out as a whisper. "What did you just do?" "I made sure he understands the consequences of touching you again." "You threatened him. With what? The Mafia?" It sounded insane saying it out loud. Luca's expression didn't change. "Does it matter?" He believed it. "But is it true?" I looked up at him, at this impossible man who'd appeared at a carnival and somehow saved my life. "Are you actually what I am?" he interrupted gently. "Is someone who believes that certain crimes deserve certain punishments. Your husband is a predator. He's done this before. He'll do it again unless someone stops him. So you stopped him." "Yes." I should have been terrified. This man was admitting to being connected to organized crime. He'd just threatened my husband with violence. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Relief, gratitude, and something deeper. Something I didn't have a name for. "I don't understand," I said. "Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me." Luca crouched down so we were eye level. "My mother," he said quietly, "stayed with a man who hurt her for 20 years. She stayed because she was afraid. Because she had nowhere to go. Because everyone told her that's what women do. They endure. When I was 16, I watched her die after he pushed her down the stairs." His jaw tightened. "I swore that day that I would never let another man like my father hurt another woman like my mother. So, when I see bruises shaped like fingerprints, Mrs. Holbrook, I act. It's that simple." Tears spilled down my cheeks. I wanted to leave. I tried to plan it, but he controls everything. The money, the house, my phone. "Not anymore." Luca stood, pulling a card from his pocket. Different from the one he'd given me at the carnival. "This is my attorney. She specializes in cases like yours. Call her tomorrow. She'll handle the divorce, the restraining order, everything. Her fees are already paid. I can't accept. You can, you will." He checked his watch. "I'm going to leave now, but there are 2 men parked outside, in the black SUV across the street. They'll be there all night, every night, until this is resolved. If your husband comes back, if anyone threatens you, you call them. Their number is on the back of the card." I stared at the card, at the name embossed in gold. "Why are you doing all this?" "Because I can. Because someone should have done it for my mother." He moved toward the door, then paused. "And because when you smiled at me tonight, for that one brief moment before you remembered to be afraid, I saw something in your eyes. Something beautiful and brave that your husband has been trying to crush. I won't let him." My heart was doing strange things in my chest. "I don't know how to thank you. Thank me by living, by being free, by smiling real smiles again." His dark eyes held mine. "And perhaps, when this is over and you've had time to heal, you'll let me take you to dinner. Somewhere far from here. Somewhere you can be yourself. Is that why you really did this? Because you want—" "No." The word was firm. "I did this because it was right. The dinner invitation is separate. You can say no. You can walk away and never see me again. The protection, the attorney, the help, none of that is conditional on anything. You owe me nothing, Rebecca. Do you understand?" I nodded, unable to speak around the lump in my throat. Good. He smiled then, just slightly, and I realized it transformed his entire face. But I hope you'll consider it. In a few months, maybe. When you're ready. He left, and I sat alone in my kitchen, in the house that had been my prison, holding the card that represented freedom. For the first time in 6 months, I smiled. A real smile. The divorce took 3 months. Marcus signed everything, just as Luca had promised he would. The restraining order was ironclad. Marcus left Connecticut entirely, taking a job in California, and I heard through mutual acquaintances that he never spoke my name again. The black SUV stayed parked outside for 6 weeks, until I told Luca I felt safe. His attorney, a fierce woman named Sarah Chen, became my friend. She helped me reclaim my inheritance, find a new job, reconnect with my parents. I didn't call Luca during those months. I needed to heal, to find myself again, to remember who Rebecca had been before Marcus, and figure out who she could be after him. But I kept his card on my nightstand, and sometimes, late at night, I'd think about dark eyes and a gentle voice saying, "When you're ready." 4 months after that night in my kitchen, I finally felt ready. I called the number on the card. He answered on the second ring. Luca Moretti. "This is Rebecca," I said. "Rebecca Holbrook. Actually, just Rebecca Chen now. I took back my maiden name." Rebecca. The warmth in his voice made my stomach flip. "It's good to hear from you." "I was wondering," I said, my heart racing with something that wasn't fear but anticipation, "if that dinner invitation is still open." There was a pause, and then, "Always. For you, always." We met at a small Italian restaurant in New Haven, neutral territory, somewhere I'd never been with Marcus. Luca was waiting when I arrived, standing when he saw me, and I realized this was the first time I'd seen him without that edge of danger, without violence humming beneath his carefully controlled surface. He looked softer, still powerful, still commanding, but peaceful. "You look different," he said as I approached. "So do you." "Happy," he clarified. "You look happy." I was. For the first time in a long time, I genuinely was. Dinner was perfect. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. He told me about his businesses, all of them legal, he assured me with a wry smile, though he admitted his family's history was complicated. I told him about my new job at a different library, about reconnecting with old friends, about feeling like I was waking up from a nightmare. "I never properly thanked you," I said as we shared dessert, "for saving my life." "You're thanking me by living it," he replied. "That's enough." But it wasn't enough. Not for me. "Can I tell you something?" I asked. "That night, when you walked into that kitchen, I thought I was dreaming. I thought you were something impossible. And then you did the impossible. I did what anyone should have done. But no one else did. Everyone saw the bruises. The librarian at my old job, the neighbors, the people at church. Everyone saw, but they convinced themselves it was none of their business. You were a stranger, and you made it your business. I told you why. I know. Your mother. And I'm sorry, Luca. I'm sorry no one saved her." I reached across the table, taking his hand the way he'd offered to shake mine that night at the carnival. "But you saved me. And I want you to know that it matters. You matter." His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong and safe. "Rebecca." "I'm not ready for anything serious," I continued quickly. "I'm still healing. Still figuring out who I am without someone controlling every move. But I'd like to get to know you, the real you, not my rescuer, not the dangerous man who threatened my husband, just you. I'd like that too." His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand. "And I'm patient. I can wait as long as you need." So we started again, from the beginning. Dating in the old-fashioned sense, with flowers and phone calls, and long conversations that lasted until dawn. He was patient with my trauma responses, with the way I flinched at sudden movements, with the nights I couldn't be touched. He was gentle and kind and funny in ways I hadn't expected, and slowly, I fell in love with him. 6 months after that first dinner, he took me back to the carnival. It was almost a year since we'd met, and the same festival was in town. "Are you sure about this?" I asked as we walked through the gates, the same sights and sounds and smells surrounding us. "Trust me," he said, holding my hand. We walked to the photo booth, booth 7 with the striped backdrop. There was no line this time. "Your turn," Luca said, gesturing to the booth. "Our turn," I corrected, pulling him in with me. We sat together, his arm around my shoulders, and when the camera flashed, I was smiling. A real smile, the kind that lit up my whole face, the kind I wore now all the time. When the photos printed, Luca looked at them and smiled too. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. The envelope from last year, with his solo photos. "I came here that night looking for someone," he said quietly. "My sister. She'd run away from an abusive boyfriend, and I'd been searching for her for months. Someone thought they'd seen her at this carnival. They hadn't. I was about to leave when I saw you." He showed me one of his solo photos, and I saw what I'd glimpsed that night. Sadness in his eyes, a deep weariness. I was tired, Rebecca. Tired of fighting, tired of seeing the worst of humanity. And then I saw you, being hurt by your husband, and something in me knew I couldn't walk away. Not this time. "Did you find her?" I asked. "Your sister?" "Yes, 2 weeks after I met you. She's safe now, living in Boston, working as a teacher." He set the old photos aside and took both my hands. "I believe in signs. In fate. I believe I was meant to be at that carnival, meant to see you, meant to help. But I also believe what comes after is a choice. Every day, I choose you. I choose this." My breath caught. "Luca," he slid off the bench, kneeling in front of me in the cramped photo booth, and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "Rebecca Chen, you are the bravest, strongest, most beautiful woman I've ever known. You've survived things that would break most people, and you've come out of it with your kindness and light intact. I don't want to rescue you, because you've already rescued yourself, but I'd very much like to stand beside you for the rest of our lives." He opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only nod as tears streamed down my face. "Yes," I finally managed. "Yes, yes, yes." He slipped the ring on my finger and kissed me. And somewhere in the mechanism of the photo booth, one more picture snapped. Later, we'd see it. Me crying, him smiling, both of us ridiculously happy in that tiny space. We were married 3 months later in a small ceremony with my parents and his family and all the friends I'd reconnected with. Sarah Chen was my maid of honor. The security guards from the black SUV attended. Even the teenage photographer from the carnival showed up, somehow having heard the story. It wasn't a fairy tale because fairy tales aren't real. It was better. It was real. It was mine. It was ours. And when Luca looked at me during our first dance, when he said, "Smile, Rebecca," it wasn't a command. It was an invitation to joy. So I smiled. A real smile. The smile of a woman who was finally, completely, beautifully free. The crisis came on what should have been an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I was at the library, reshielding books in the romance section, when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You think you're safe now? You think he can protect you forever? Stupid bitch, you destroyed my life. Now I'm going to destroy yours." My hands started shaking so badly I dropped my phone. It clattered on the hardwood floor, and my coworker Jenny looked over with concern. "Rebecca, you okay?" I wasn't okay. Marcus had been silent for a year of peace, of healing, of building a new life. I'd started to believe it was over, that he'd actually moved on, that California had swallowed him up and he'd forgotten about me. I'd been wrong. I picked up my phone with trembling fingers and immediately called Luca. "My love," he answered, warmth in his voice. "I was just thinking about you." He texted me. The words came out strangled. Marcus. He texted me from a new number. The warmth vanished, replaced by something cold and hard. What did he say? I read him the message, hating how my voice shook, hating that after all this time Marcus could still make me feel small and afraid. I'm coming to get you, Luca said immediately. Stay in the library. Stay around people. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Luca, you're in New York today. The meeting with... I don't care. I'm leaving now. No. I forced steadiness into my voice. No, I'm not doing this. I'm not letting him control my life again. I'm not running scared. Rebecca, I have a restraining order. I'm calling the police, reporting the message, and then I'm finishing my shift, like a normal person. Because I refuse to give him this power. There was a long pause. Then, you're right. You're absolutely right. But I'm still coming home early. And I'm calling Anthony. He'll be outside the library in 5 minutes. Anthony was one of the men who'd watched my house last year. He'd become something of a friend, always respectful, always professional. Okay, I agreed. That's fair. I reported the message to the police. They documented it, added it to Marcus's file, told me they'd try to trace the number. I knew it was futile. Marcus was a lawyer. He knew how to hide his tracks. But I finished my shift. I smiled at patrons. I helped a teenager find books for a school project. I refused to let fear win. Anthony was waiting when I left, leaning against a black sedan. Mrs. Moretti, he greeted with a slight smile. Heard you had some excitement today. Nothing I can't handle. I don't doubt it, but humor me and let me drive you home anyway. The texts continued over the next few days, different numbers each time, impossible to trace. I saw you at the grocery store. You were wearing that blue dress. You looked happy. That won't last. Does your new husband know what a lying witch you really are? You ruined me. I lost everything because of you. You're going to pay. Each message made my stomach twist, but I refused to hide. I went to work. I met friends for coffee. I lived my life, with Anthony or one of Luca's other men always nearby, always watching. Luca was supportive, but I could see the rage simmering beneath his calm exterior. At night, I'd wake to find him awake, staring at the ceiling, his jaw clenched. Talk to me, I said one night, curling against his side. I'm thinking about all the ways I'd like to make him disappear, he admitted quietly. All the people I know who could ensure he never bothers you again. Luca, I won't. He pulled me closer. I promised you I'd handle things legally, and I will. But understanding that and wanting it are two different things. I know. But I need you here, with me, not in prison for murder. He kissed the top of my head, practical as always. On Friday, exactly 1 week after the first text, I was locking up the library when I saw him. Marcus was standing across the street, leaning against a lamppost, watching me. He'd changed, lost weight. His expensive clothes hung loosely on his frame, and his face had a gaunt, hollow quality. But his eyes were the same. Cold, calculating, full of hate. My heart slammed against my ribs. Anthony was parked at the corner, but Marcus had positioned himself so the car was blocked by traffic. I was alone on the library steps, separated from help by a busy street. He smiled. That same charming smile that had fooled me once. Then he started walking toward me. I fumbled for my phone, but my hands were shaking too badly. Marcus was crossing the street, dodging cars, never taking his eyes off me. Rebecca! Anthony's voice shouting. He'd gotten out of the car, was running, but traffic was thick and Marcus was closer. Marcus reached the sidewalk, reached the bottom of the library steps. Up close, I could smell alcohol on him. His eyes were bloodshot, wild. Did you miss me? He asked conversationally. Stay back. My voice came out stronger than I felt. There's a restraining order. You're not supposed to be within 500 feet of me. Oh, I know. I know all about the restraining order, and the divorce, and how you took everything. My reputation, my career, my money, all of it, gone. He took a step up. Because you couldn't just be a good wife. You had to go crying to your Mafia boyfriend. He's not. I stopped. It didn't matter. Nothing I said would matter. The police are on their way. Good. Let them come. Let everyone see what you really are. He lunged up the stairs and I stumbled backward, hitting the library door. My phone clattered from my hands. Marcus grabbed my arms, his face inches from mine, and for a moment I was back in that kitchen, back in that life, back in that fear. You destroyed me, he hissed. So I'm going to destroy you. Right here, right now, in front of everyone. His hands moved to my throat, and then he was flying backward, crashing down the library steps, landing in a heap on the sidewalk. Luca stood where Marcus had been, his chest heaving, his fist still clenched. I hadn't even heard him arrive. He must have been close by, must have been watching. Marcus groaned, rolling onto his side. Blood streamed from his nose. Anthony was there now too, pulling Marcus's arms behind his back, holding him down. Don't move, Anthony said calmly. Police are 30 seconds out. Luca turned to me, his face transforming from fury to concern. Did he hurt you? Rebecca, are you hurt? I shook my head, unable to speak. I was shaking all over, adrenaline crashing through my system. He pulled me into his arms, one hand cradling my head against his chest. You're safe. I've got you. You're safe. Police cars screeched up, sirens wailing. Officers poured out, taking in the scene. Marcus on the ground, Anthony restraining him, Luca holding me, security cameras pointed at the library entrance capturing everything. He attacked my wife, Luca said, his voice carrying clear authority. She has a restraining order. He grabbed her by the throat. It's all on camera. The officers hauled Marcus to his feet. He was crying now, rage and alcohol and desperation mixing into something pathetic. She ruined my life, he screamed as they dragged him toward the patrol car. I was going to be someone. I was going to matter. And she ruined everything. No, Luca called out, his voice cutting through Marcus's hysteria. You ruined your own life the moment you laid hands on her. She just had the courage to survive you. Marcus struggled against the officers, his face purple with rage. You think you've won? You think this is over? I'll get out. I'll come back. You'll spend the next 5 to 10 years in prison, one of the officers interrupted flatly. Violation of a restraining order, assault, harassment. And that's if your victim doesn't press additional charges. They shoved him into the car. As it pulled away, Marcus stared at me through the window, and I saw something in his face that I hadn't seen before. Not hatred. Defeat. He knew it was over. Really over. I sagged against Luca, my legs giving out. He caught me easily, lifting me into his arms like I weighed nothing. I've got you, he murmured. Always. I've got you. Anthony cleared his throat. I'll talk to the police. Give them my statement. You two go home. Luca carried me to his car, settled me in the passenger seat, and drove us home in silence. Not the terrible silence of my marriage to Marcus, but a comfortable, healing silence. The silence of someone who understood that I needed space to process, to breathe, to come back to myself. At home, he ran me a bath, made me tea, wrapped me in a blanket on the couch. Then he sat beside me and simply held my hand, waiting for me to be ready to talk. I was terrified, I finally said. I know. But I was also angry, furious. How dare he? How dare he show up and try to take my peace, my safety, my life again? He can't anymore. Luca's thumb traced circles on my palm. The police said with the documented texts, the violation, the assault, he's looking at serious prison time. And after that, he'll be on parole with strict conditions. If he so much as sends you a birthday card, he goes back inside. Good. I looked at our joined hands. Is it wrong that I'm glad? That I want him locked away? No, it's justice. He hurt you. He threatened you. He deserves consequences. I used to think I was weak for not leaving him sooner, I said quietly. But I wasn't weak. I was trapped. There's a difference. There is. And you found the strength to get out. That's what matters. I turned to face him fully. You know what I realized today? When he grabbed me, right before you pulled him off, I realized I wasn't the same person anymore. The Rebecca he married, the one who was afraid and small and convinced she deserved his treatment, she's gone. I'm someone different now, someone stronger. You were always strong, Luca said. You just needed room to remember it. And you gave me that room. I touched his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. I saw how angry you were. I saw you holding yourself back. I wanted to kill him, he admitted. When I saw his hands on your throat, I wanted to throw him down those stairs and keep throwing him until he stopped moving. But I knew that's not what you needed. You needed him arrested. You needed justice, not vengeance. Thank you for knowing the difference. He kissed my forehead, my cheeks, my lips. Soft kisses that held promises. I will always protect you, Rebecca. But I'll never control you. There's a difference there, too. I know. That's why I love you. We stayed up late that night, talking through everything. The fear, the anger, the relief. Processing it together, the way partners should. The trial was 4 months later. I testified clearly and calmly, walking the jury through the marriage, the abuse, the texts, the violation. Marcus's attorney tried to paint me as vindictive, as someone who'd weaponized the system against an innocent man. But the evidence was overwhelming. The photos of bruises, the documented texts, the security footage of him attacking me on the library steps. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 8 years, with the possibility of parole after 5 if he completed anger management and stayed out of trouble. As they led him away, Marcus looked at me one last time. I looked back, unafraid. I forgive you, I said clearly, so everyone in the courtroom could hear. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. You have no power over me anymore. None. You're just a man who made terrible choices and now you're facing the consequences. And I'm going to go home to someone who loves me. Someone who would never hurt me. And I'm going to live the beautiful life you tried to steal. Goodbye, Marcus. He flinched like I'd struck him. Then he was gone, shuffled away by guards, disappearing into the system. Luca was waiting outside the courtroom. He pulled me into his arms and I breathed in his scent, let his warmth surround me. It's over, I said. It's really truly over. It is. You're free, my love. Completely free. We walked out of the courthouse hand in hand into bright sunshine. My parents were waiting, along with Sarah Chen and Anthony and a dozen other friends who'd come to support me. Lunch? My mother suggested, hugging me tight. Celebration lunch? Yes, I agreed. Definitely yes. We went to a restaurant with a patio, eating and laughing and toasting to new beginnings. At one point, Luca pulled me aside, away from the others. I have something for you, he said, reaching into his jacket. If this is another gift, it's not a gift. It's a choice. He handed me an envelope. Inside were 2 tickets to Italy, first class, leaving in a month. I have business in Rome. I thought maybe if you wanted, you could come with me. We could take a real honeymoon. The one we didn't take because you were still dealing with legal proceedings. A month in Italy? 2 weeks business, 2 weeks pure vacation. Venice, Florence, the Amalfi Coast. Wherever you want to go. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. But only if you want to. No pressure. No expectations. I thought about it. A year and a half ago, I'd been standing in a kitchen, terrified, trapped, convinced I'd never escape. Now I was being offered a trip to Italy with a man who loved me, protected me, respected me. Yes, I said. Absolutely, yes. His smile could have lit up the entire city. We went to Italy. We ate pasta and gelato. We walked through ancient ruins and Renaissance museums. We took a gondola ride in Venice, where Luca kissed me under bridges and whispered Italian endearments that made me blush. We stayed in a villa overlooking the Mediterranean, where we could hear waves and smell lemon trees and forget that anything bad had ever happened. One evening, sitting on our balcony watching the sunset, Luca asked me something he'd been clearly working up courage to ask all day. Do you still have nightmares about him? Sometimes, I admitted. Less than before. And when I wake up, you're there. That helps. Good. He was quiet for a moment. I have nightmares too. About what might have happened if I hadn't been there that day. If I'd been 5 minutes later. But you were there, I interrupted gently. You were there at the carnival. You were there at the library. You've been there every day since. That's what matters. I want to always be there. You will be. I leaned against him, his arm coming around my shoulders automatically. We saved each other, Luca. You saved me from Marcus, but I saved you too. From that anger, that darkness you said you were drowning in. We saved each other. We did, he agreed softly. And now? Now we live. We love. We're happy. I smiled up at him. We win. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. Somewhere in California, Marcus sat in a prison cell, paying for his choices. But I wasn't there. I was here, in Italy, with a man who cherished me. I was free. I was loved. I was whole. And when Luca kissed me as the sun disappeared into the sea, I kissed him back with all the joy and passion and fearless love of a woman who'd survived the darkness and found her way into the light. This was my happy ending. Not because a man rescued me, but because I'd found the courage to save myself, and then found a partner who stood beside me as an equal. This was real. This was mine. This was love. And it was more beautiful than any fairy tale could ever be.